Fighting update. As of last week, I started using my right arm again, and it's been cooperating with me really well. I got an arthroscopic revision of the tissues and the cartilage and things like that, and got some floating bodies excised and some arthritis cleaned up, essentially. But I've been fighting again for about a week with my right arm. It's going very well. My last physical therapy appointment is Wednesday. So I've been hitting PT for like a couple of months now, so that's my last appointment. It was my vision quest to make my friends laugh. Not my friends laugh, but the doctor and the PT laugh a little bit, and the exercise specialist laugh because they're it's like 8:30 in the morning, and these are a bunch of surly young women who don't want to wake up in the morning. I don't either. It's like totally fair. But eventually I won them over. Thank you. I love this shirt. I actually like ordered it by mistake, but like the pain is weakness or whatever leaving the body is freaking stupid. Like pain is usually like tendonitis or arthritic buildup or something like that. So I like to lampoon broken masculinity concepts a little bit. So fighting again. I got my first PEL since I like moved away from home, and I started pelling again in earnest, and I did like 800 shots today. I used to do like 2,000 something when I was like coming up, and I'm just like, gods, I was strong then, like Robert Baratheon commenting on his mortality. But we're gonna get back there. We're gonna build back up. Let's get started on here. So we got Big Head. I think Dandelion's kind of got Big Head in the corner here. I feel like this video started mid-fight, so I'm not sure like how he got back here, so we're not going to concern ourselves with this. It looks like Dandelion's first shot is like an underside scoop to the forearm. And Big Head's just hanging out. It looked like he whiffed that shot. Okay, so I think what's going on here is it looks like Dandelion kind of threw that underside shot, and Big Head is aware that he's like in the corner, right? And he's being like a little bit more static, but I think maybe he's saying to himself like, okay, I have the reach advantage here. There's no need to panic, and if I try to move side to side, I'm very likely to get caught, right? Because there's not a ton of space in this direction for him to pivot or this direction. So if he does that, I think that Dandelion can kind of like just press and cut him off pretty easily, right? So I think what he's doing here is he's kind of saying like, okay, you've got me cornered. I have the reach advantage. I'm gonna just like let this play out. I don't know how I feel about that situation, because I feel like as an optimization, it would be possible to move like slightly side to side. He may be like conserving energy, might be tired for doing other things at the event, but I think there are small jukes that would be able to create like a little bit of confusion here. But it looks like he's kind of stayed static and sniped him. And I like that timing on it, right? Because Dandelion does like a kind of a long range backhand. I think it doesn't look like he overcommits too much. But it looks like he throws it, stutters a little bit. And I like Big Head's setup here, where he laid his sword flat, like, I'm gonna stab you. He crossed him, hit him again, and then spun for extra points for good measure. So he's like, he sets up a stab, cross, just a second bonk. And I think he spun away to kind of pull himself out of reach. And while I don't really I'm not a huge fan of spins in general, but I think the choice is kind of smart in this specific scenario, because it lets him get his arm very quickly out of reach, and he doesn't have any room to maneuver here. He may not be aware that he has like another foot or two until he gets out of the corner, but I think this is like a good like spot dodge where he's like standing in place but dodging to make sure that he doesn't get hit and takes his opponent out. So I like that. Okay, Vulcan versus Starling. Is that like a one and done, huh? I'm not sure. All right, so we've got... I think it looks like Starling called her own shot late here. Okay, I bet. Okay. Maybe she got hit, like, on that initial pullback. And then decided that her shot was late after that, like it got her wrist or something. I think it's the only way I kind of see this going on. This is just like another one and done fight. But I think the main thing here is if I was Starling, it looks like she opened to the body kind of low to start out with, right? So like it looked like Vulcan kind of threw like a high shot, and then Starling came in with like a riposte to low. And it looked like, I think I'm very wary on throwing low shots to start fights out because it doesn't let you use your max reach effectively. And the other problem with low shots in single sword is like, if you're throwing low, a lot of the times people are like coming over high, right? So if they kind of return high while you're going low, it's very easy to get like at least simuled for that. So I might have spent a little bit more time on the outside and kind of just figuring out like, hey, what is my opponent going to do? I'm having trouble finding my mouse. There it is. Like, I would spend a little bit of time just kind of moving around here, figuring out like, what's my opponent going to do? I don't know if these two know each other. If you don't, it's especially important to like take a little bit of time, especially like in a one and done scenario. That seems like this is just like a single fight by itself. Take a little time to figure out like, what are they going to do? Stay back and maneuver and try to just like elicit as much information as you can from them. So if you move around a little bit and try to tease out a little bit more information by like throwing safe stutters, high shots that are safe, specifically like if you throw like a cross from max distance and you hit their hand and you leave your hand in a high position up here, it's very hard for them to like snipe your arm with like a high cross, right? So I tend to start those kinds of engagements with those shots unless I see like a super clear opening. And it's possible that Starling felt like she had that opening to go low. But I think that was maybe like not quite the move to make. I think the same advice also goes for Vulcan. So like if you kind of just like, let's see what shot he threw so I remember correctly. So he kind of came in and he's like, here's a safe cross. He did a couple of stutters. Okay, so he did like a couple of stutters to kind of tease that out. He may have decided that this might have been a situation where like there's going to be a skill disparity and he thinks he's like faster and stronger. I feel like that was a tiny bit rushed and I would have spent a little bit more time scouting my opponent. So one of the reasons that you can kind of guess that there should have been more time scouting the opponent is that like he did get hit. It seems like it wasn't in time, but there was still like this clarification phase afterwards, right? Where like optimally you kind of just hit your opponent and everyone kind of knows what's going on and you don't get hit back for it, right? So that's something that you should like just always take the time to scout your opponent if you've never seen them before. Lots of circling, lots of feints from the outside, lots of stutters, lots of jukes, just to see like what are they thinking about? What are they going to do? Is their hand position going to drift up when I come in them? Maybe that means they're going to counter with a high cross. Are they going to kind of dip their hand down when I fake at them? Maybe they're going to try to like close and counter money me, right? So I think for a big tournament like Keep, I probably would have spent a little bit more time on that, like, regardless of who my opponent is, because, like, it only takes one good bot to knock you out, right? I think that's my input for that one. That's like a kind of a simple situation where, like, if you took a little bit longer to research your opponent, you tend to get better results. This must have been, it seemed like they walked off afterwards, so this may have been the second or third fight in the series. So maybe he felt like he already did that in the previous round. Yeah. Just showed the footage and he thought was good. Yeah, it's possible. So we got Ace versus Destroyer. So Ace is in the red, Destroyer's in the black. So let's check this out. I'm just seeing if we're going to get two fights out of this. Like a sign or something, maybe. Boy, these rings are really small. It's the first thing that I'm noticing. I'm going to look at this second fight one more time, and then we're going to break it down a fight at a time and just trying to get a beat on both guys. Nice shot. Okay. So, I think the first thing I noticed is these guys both have some pretty quick footwork. So you can see there's like lots of movement. I really like, in particular, I like Ace's footwork the most out of this right here. So he's moving back and forth a lot. He's changing his position in space a ton, right? So that's always excellent, especially in single sword, because it masks your positioning, and it also creates like a lot of openings, especially if you like jump forward a little bit. People think like, okay, on the beat where his feet touch the ground, he's gonna like jump in towards me. It just creates like a lot of confusion. In single sword, in Florentine, moving side to side at all is like just an S tier strategy. It doesn't even really matter if you have much of a purpose to it. It just really helps to add that in. He's definitely doing that much. What I noticed from Destroyer's footwork is he's like, it feels like he's kind of trying to mimic that same pacing, but he's mostly going up and down, right? Like kind of like a fighting game, Bob. So check it out. Up and down a little bit, back and forth a little bit. He's got some slight adjustments in one direction. And actually, it looks like they kind of reversed. Now that I'm watching it again, I'm seeing Ace kind of move side to side and then stop, and then Destroyer's moving side to side after that. So I think I'm gonna get that footwork advantage to Destroyer on that one. But they're both doing some very similar good work with their feet. I think it looked like Ace is kind of coming in with like a lot of side to side and in and out. And then Destroyer sees that he starts to, it looks like Ace kind of starts to lock down and focus on his hands a little bit more. And Destroyer sees that footwork kind of stop and picks up his own side to side, which I think that was a smart gambit in the sense that like sometimes if someone's doing like a ton of fancy footwork, they'll wind themselves or tire themselves out pretty quickly because it takes a lot of stamina to engage in that, right? So that's not a tactic that someone's going to be able to engage in for 4 hours, right? So if you wait them out for a little bit and then pick up your own footwork when they start to sag, that's a really good way to get like an advantage. So I think that was like strategically a smart choice. It looks like Ace took a lot of extra ground right at the start, right? He's got all this field. And Destroyer looks like he has a little bit less, right? Like this is going to be shorter, even though they look the same distance because it's closer to the camera. Where like if Ace was going back to the opposite corner, it's like somewhere way back here. So if you've ever played Smash Brothers, there's a concept called like stage control. Where let's see if I can draw this out. Okay. So like if we've got a stage here, right? In Smash. If you've ever played Smash, if you fall off this stage, you lose, right? So assuming that the boundaries are enforced, and we've got guy number 1 over here, and we got guy number 2 over here. So we've got this distance between them, right? So this is kind of like where the fight takes place, but it's also important to manage this distance too, right? So guy number 1, he doesn't have very much room to back up. And especially in single sword, backing up is a really important defensive option for you to be able to take. So Ace coming out of the corner and trying to seize a lot of ground right away is a really good tactic. Because if number 2 was Ace, I kind of had this reversed. But if number 2 is Ace, if he needs to execute some sort of defensive option in which he steps backwards. Let's say a step back is this far, and he takes another one and another one, like assuming that these are all the same length. He's got 4 defensive maneuvers he can take before he runs out of stage, whereas guy 1 only has 1 before he hits that hard boundary. So you want to think about it like, obviously in Smash it's a 2D fighter, but in Amtgard with a ring, it's a 3-dimensional plane. So you need to make sure that you take some ring control fairly quickly so that you have on reserve all of these extra defensive options available to you, right? So it helps to kind of come out that gate and force that attack. I have a feeling with the rings being pretty small, we're going to see that a fair amount. But it's just something that you should always be thinking about. Let's look at hands. Hands are... I think we've got good variety from Destroyer. So he's like, looks like he's onside chop, 2 crosses. So he had like a little cross tap and a second longer cross. Offside chop again, offside chop again. Then there was a money underneath. Okay, so I think his variety looked good there. I think the issue was it looked like Ace kind of pulled this off. I think they ruled this a simul, but it looked like Ace kind of just patiently blocked him out and then kind of snuck his own shots in there. I think Destroyer had great shot variety here, and that's exactly what you want to see. But I think it was like all kind of the same tempo because it looks like he's out of ring, right? So he's kind of works his way back into that corner. He probably doesn't feel very comfortable at this point, given that he's only got this much more space to go. So he's like, okay, I got to turn up my offense to try to lock him down to keep him from pushing me out of the ring. And it's just kind of like too late at that point, right? Especially in something like single sword where like the only way to create extra defensive coverage when you attack is to use your offhand, which you only get 1 hit like that, right? But I did like the variety there. That was good. He kept the pressure up and kept that variety going. I think both of these guys have a really good distance between their feet. Like, it looks like, got like a nice measure between their feet. They're not going too far. They're moving around a fair amount, but they're not overcommitting. So I like that. We're deliberating, and then fight 2 is around 52 seconds. Good footwork. Destroyer's back at the corner again. Okay. So he kind of got pushed in the corner twice, and it looked like he kind of got chopped up a little bit for it. I definitely recommend, I think in most fighter practices, people kind of just like show up to the park and fight a lot. But it's extremely helpful to find, to have your practices resemble the tournaments that you need to compete in. So you can get these agility cones out here. It's like $20-30 for a set, so you can make yourself a little ring and like practice. I think it's extremely helpful because the type of stage that you're fighting on matters a lot. No, that's okay. Okay, so that was really cool. Sir Magnus's underbelt. I think I had the guy in blue as one of my SKBC cards, if I'm remembering correctly. For a second one. Let's go back. Okay, it looks like Unknown got the shoulder there, and Blue Tabard got offhand and then leg. Or else David. Gotcha. Okay, inside shot. Okay. So this was super cool. Where if you look at Unknown's feet here, I think that what he's executing right now is kind of what Ace and Destroyer are going for with their footwork, where they're doing like a very bouncy kind of stepping around a lot, and it looks like a boxer or a martial artist might, right? And I think that that's, if you're like a very light person, if you can do that, it's really powerful because the person who's not doing all of the movement has to kind of follow you, so you've stripped their ability to lead the fight away from them. And I think what's especially expert about this is like Unknown uses lateral control to take the ring from Blue Tabard in fight one very quickly. So watch him go. He's going to move right this way and then kind of push in. It's going to push him to the back, I think, and get the position that he wants. So he just did that with his feet, right? He went straight over and he's already in the corner, right? And he just moved laterally with a couple of big steps and then pushed in, and he got him right in the corner. And he kind of closed in slowly. And I think Blue Tabard's kind of looking for a way out, but saw that this path here was like very narrow. So he's like, okay, I got to try to drive hard to the right to like get out of here. I don't know if I would have made that choice. I might have tried to go out this way or fake this and then try to drive out that way. But I think the most important stuff is like, just don't necessarily back up just because they walk to you. You always have the option to throw like a safe shot to their hands if you're really careful, or just fake or juke, or just pump your sword at them being like, hey, if you come over here, bud, like I'm going to bop you. Those are some ways that you can take a little bit more control of that space if you're not like the faster guy. And there's a bit of an art to it, but it's always an option that's on the table. And I don't think it costs nearly as much energy as like stepping around really fast. It looks like, I want to see why did this hit? And what were the hands doing? So I think what happened here, this is a guess, but it looked like Blue Tabard kind of came in with a fake that indicated that he was going to go high, and I think Unknown backed up and kind of read through the fake and figured like, yeah, I can just catch that with my offhand and then hit you in the body for swinging at me. And it looked like the backwards distance that Unknown traveled kind of like made Blue Tabard land a little bit too far away. So he had to like kind of reach a little bit too far to throw. And then he kind of just basically got it blocked to the offhand and chopped them up. It's like just a pretty normal single sword play. So that I think Blue Tabard's going to sweep to the right and then kind of come forward with that like a feint up here, and then see if you can chop at him. And Unknown's going to back up once, and then when he takes that second step, it looks like Unknown lets him come in, catches it with his offhand, and just kills him. This is fake. Yeah. So I think that that's the basics of what happened there, is that Unknown kind of forced him to make a timing error with his footwork, and then just killed him for it. Caught up with the offhand. There was in the chat from Silsey. It was a good point. Throwing to the hand is also a good way to see if they're like trying to elicit some block strike or like have an exchange or something like that. It's also a good way to see if they're going to counter strike, because they'll start to chop at you. It's just a good way of sensing like what are they going to do. Let's fight 2. All right, fight 2. So you could see Unknown executes the same footwork play, and Blue Tabard ends up in the same position where Unknown steps real far this way and then turns to face him against the back of the ring, cuts out his ability to do footwork, steals that ring control like we talked about. Okay, so we saw the same lateral setup and forward push there. So, Thalion, you're kind of out of room to back up here. And then it looks like you took a little bit back, but I think you needed to try to drive out further and maybe swat at his hand or pressure him with your sword more, right? You're not... Unknown is a lot faster and lighter than you. He's faster and lighter than me, too. I'm not going to be able to establish, like, footwork control and beat him there. But if you pump and juke at him and say, like, hey, man, I will hit you if you come here, that can sometimes relieve a little bit of pressure off of people who have that fast footwork. So I would keep that in mind as an option. Okay, so I think the main form change, Thalion, that I would make here is when you're kind of squaring up to him, it looks like your sword is pretty vertical like this. Like you're trying to catch like an outside guard or something like that. I would try to work on having your base form from max range. Or your defense should probably be up here, right? Because the closest thing that they can reach is going to be these high quadrant shots. Whereas if you kind of come in like this, it doesn't cover those high quadrants very well. And your low quadrants aren't really covered. But if you have like a kind of a part of the house guard up here when you come in, this upper spot, it cuts off this cross and it draws deeper attacks to the inside of your forearm and your sword side hips specifically. So it looks like you kind of came in, threw a shot, had that vertical guard, came in, threw a shot, had that vertical guard again. I would try to work some more horizontal in there. I feel like horizontal chops in single sword are really powerful. So let's look at that again. All right, so we come in, we've got this seam out of ring control here. And then Thalion, when you push in here, your sword is getting real vertical. And we just want something that's a little bit more horizontal. And I think your choice to thrust there, it looked like it may have worked because I think Unknown was like maybe slightly square. But a thrust is something more that you would do to counter like an approach, right? So thrusts are super committal, and you can definitely like hit the people with the mid exchange, but I feel like the setup kind of takes too many frames to do from the inside. So I think I probably would have used like a horizontal chop or maybe like a rising chop with an upward sweep or something to get my hand in a high position at max range to kind of draw him in lower and just make sure that like it's especially critical in single sword that every swing you take should also create some defense for you. There are some swings that don't create defense, and I think thrusts are an example of like they don't really create much defense for you because the end position isn't really like blocking off any of the lanes. So I might try to get some more horizontal work in there. But I think that covers what I see for this fight. I hope that's of use to you. But that's a good fight. Also, like, I think Unknown would wipe the floor with me right now. So there's that too. These are just like small optimizations to offer. I don't think any one specific thing is going to save anybody from Unknown. That man is dangerous. Okay. Dandelion versus Matrix. Okay. I like the bow. This step was from downtown. Okay. It's another. This is a good fight. Some deliberation here. So reset. Okay, well, let's watch one more. Okay. Let's go back. So I think there's a couple of elements that stand out to me right away. Man, Dandelion can fucking fly when he tries. I don't know if y'all are too young for NBA Jam, but there's like a 16-bit sound clip of From Downtown that I just like hear in my ears where they used to work. It's like some of those stabs were like from forever away. And it looks like Matrix is using a lot of like crossing footwork and switch steps kind of on the outside. What is it? 2H fighter? Like two-hand weapon? Is that what that is? Yeah, okay. Reds. Okay. I feel like the single sword's like not bad for someone who's like not a specialist in the style. Let's go back. Let's take it apart a fight at a time. See what we can come up with. I'm not looking at Greatsword. I'm sorry. I can't. I won't. Just met them this weekend. They had a two-hander and a strap shield on their left arm mostly when I saw them. Gotcha. Okay. I feel like what they're doing is not bad for someone who's like not a sword, a single sword specialist. If you guys have like a way that you feel like that relates to what I say, feel free to call it out because I don't do any two-handed fighting at all. I feel like A, I suck at it. B, I have very poor control. C, I'm very strong, so that poor control manifests in me hurting people. D, I'm very emotional, so I get very sad when I hurt people, so I don't really have like a basis for comparison there. But if you guys see something like, this reminds me of like a two-handed thing, I'm wondering if the switching, the footing, those crossing steps that I'll call out, if those have something to do with using a red or something like that, that'd be interesting. But let's break this apart. So we've got, on that first one, it looked like we had some good kind of inside-outside stuff, which is why like I wouldn't have guessed that this person doesn't use single sword very much, because they've got inside and outside coming. Yeah. And then left hand. Okay, it looks like they just got hit there. Red fighters switch front foot a lot. That makes sense. Just out of curiosity, you have a favorite preferred weapon set? I like Board the best, and then Florentine second, and then single sword is my least favorite, and pole / great I just don't participate in. I'm gonna start trying sometime early next year. I just need to recondition my elbows to do the things that I want them to do first. So a lot of imitating Street Fighter animations like Eddie. Yeah, I'm seeing like a lot of fighting game footwork in these so far, which is like not a bad place to start. It's not maybe the most optimized thing to do, but it's very confusing, right? So if you use like confusing footwork, especially if you're like, okay, well that's like Eddie Gordo from Tekken or whatever, like this guy doesn't know how to fight, and then they do know how to fight, like you're gonna die for making that guess about their fighting, right? So that was the from downtown stab. So I think like what I'm kind of seeing from Matrix is that like they're doing a lot of footwork on the outside, but they're kind of locking down when there's like actual sword action going on. I think that makes sense with being like a two-handed specialist, where like if you're devoting too much attention to a piece of equipment that you're unfamiliar with, you're a lot less likely to move your feet while you're doing that. So that may have something to do with it. But it looked like we had like good switching of feet on the outside, but when the sword work starts happening, we're like a little bit stiff. I think there's good variety, some good horizontal chops. They're returning to guard and they're putting their offhand up to block, so that's none of that's bad. Okay, bow. Matrix looks like she wants to stand and bang. Yeah, you can't do that in single sword. Like, if you're gonna stand and bang, it's just sword and board. I think it's the only spot where you could do that. I think if you're gonna stand and grind, like, that's the only area where you can do that. Anywhere else will get you killed for that for sure. So that was why I kind of felt like that stab from downtown. So you have to look at it in terms of, let's see if we can go back a little bit. So when someone does a big lunge like that, we're going to look for is before the big lunge, there has to be like a loading phase where you drop down to put tension like in your hips and your quads and your glutes to drive you forward, right? You can't just take huge long steps without startup time on that maneuver, right? So like by the time that you see that startup time, you should be taking a step backwards because this is a huge lunge. It's very long, right? But you should still be able to read that and not get caught off guard by it. So let's see if we can see him drop. Let's see if Dandelion drop into place for this lunge. So he kind of did drop, but he kind of leaned forward, kind of slowly. Kind of leaned forward slowly and then drove, which is another way to kind of power it. I feel like that lean should have triggered some backward steps to try to take that range. So I think that's something to look for, right? Like I like to keep the center of my gaze on my opponent's chest. So if you see that range kind of closing because they're leaning forward at you, that's a time that you would want to like take that step back. And you also need to, I think, do we have ring control there? This next fight. Bow. Switch foot. So we didn't really have any ring control to back up with either, right? Let's see if we can go back just a second or two. Okay, so this is where the stab started. And you can see that the ring, I think this is the corner, and it goes straight back this way. I think that this is just a cluster of cones, so I think it's just, that's not right. I think the ring is here. Right? So he's like right at the edge. So there's no room for them to really back up to be able to parry that stab. So I think that this particular tactic is like get them in the corner, do a giant ass lunge and stab the crap out of them is super smart if you have ring control. It depends on how they treat the boundaries. If they're a soft boundary, they can kind of step out for the reset or step out to get that block. But if it's a hard boundary where you die, like they're gonna have to block this stab or they're gonna have to step out and die, and it's like a very tough situation. I think Matrix needed to come in closer and take some ring control to make sure that Dandelion didn't have the space to do this giant lunge. So I think that's my input on that one. Let's see if we got anything from the last fight. They're laughing about it, so it's always a good attitude. This is a great stab. I think that probably would have hit me for sure. So that's like good footwork there, right, with the step back and forth. But then, aside from that was good. So we've got more lateral adjustments from Matrix. So I don't know if they're gonna like watch this video, but the lateral adjustments that you did on fight 3, if you started doing those on round 1, I think that you would have had a lot more success, because I felt like that looked a lot more what that lateral movement should look like. So that was stronger there. And it's funny how like I think this came up in the last couple of videos where like people would start with some areas that they needed to improve, and then they would improve them in fight 2 and fight 3. But it's like, it's kind of too late, right? You don't want to have to be in a situation where you're playing catch up. You want to like get them with your best stuff on fight 1, because it establishes control over the fight. It builds pressure because they're at a deficit, and it's also making the best use of your energy, where your energy is going to be highest on fight 1, right? Like you can leave some stuff in the tank for fight 3 if you feel like that's an important part of the strategy. But I feel like fight 1, like you got to lock in on that one and start using that lateral stuff right away. Side to side. We're kind of still again. There's a little advancing. I felt like that looked, the movement was pretty good. I felt like we had a little bit too much verticality to our footwork, and we're kind of like hopping up and losing our touch with the ground, so we were losing control. But the spacing was certainly better. You kind of want to. There's something to be said for like fancy footwork, but you don't want to get too elevated off the ground, because you can't like suddenly change directions when you're in the air. So you want to minimize the time between movement and your foot coming back down to the ground so that you can move again. About better job of taking ring control. Okay, I think that was maybe just like too all out of an attack, and then just kind of got bonked for it. Morpheus versus Starling. So let's check this out. Okay. So I noticed a couple things off the bat. So this is like a very tall warlord versus a shorter fighter. So that tells me some stuff like kind of right off the bat. So the first thing that I'm seeing is I want this area to think kind of carefully about sword. I want you to think carefully about the position of your sword and your sword's verticality versus horizontalness, I guess is the word. I don't think it's horizontality or something. I think it's horizontalness. But basically, so I think it's okay for Morpheus to have his sword like fairly vertical like this, because what that allows you to do is kind of dance in and outside. I got that cross that in front of my face. I've got like facial tracking. Inside lane or outside lane, right? When it's like real vertical like this. So I think that that's okay to do when you have a range or a foot speed advantage, because those things kind of naturally confer you the ability to open the fight, right? But when you're shorter, since you don't have access to that like ability to make them guess inside or outside lane, you want to kind of change your positioning to orient it more towards defense, right? So for Starling, I would probably use a more horizontal guard like this just to cut something off, right? So it's like if Morpheus takes his sword and tries to shift it towards that outside lane as a fake, Starling can make the assumption like, this is already covered, right? So if you want to fake out that way, that's fine, but it's covered already. So really the only thing that kind of becomes a threat then is the inside lane or a fake to the inside lane and then striking the outside lane, which may seem like it's not that big of a benefit, but just making sure that there is some sort of flowchart available to your opponent, that not available, but there's some sort of flowchart that your opponent is like required to execute on. It takes the range of possibilities and things that can happen to the fight and kind of funnels them down into, it's obviously not a finite number of possibilities, but it's closer to finite than just having like a non-guard to start, right? So if I was taller than someone, I think it's perfectly fine to have a horizontal sword because you're economizing more towards offense and misdirection. But if you're not the one who's like in the control of that range and the control of the offensive tempo, it's better to start economizing more towards defense. Is that fight one? This is fight one. I would call out Starling did some good in and out footwork here. Like they were approaching cautiously, and that was very smart, right? So in and out right there, that looked good. Backed off a little bit. I think I might have tried to keep the pressure on Morpheus because it looks like Starling moved out around. It's not a very good curve. Moved out around this way, which lets Morpheus kind of slip out around this direction. When like a second ago, we were right here. Like if we're here, look, he's got 6 inches before he's out, right? So this would be the time to kind of close and pressure and try to pick apart this guard and see if you can get him to move that vertical sword back and forth to try to throw them off a little bit, right? But I think we kind of acquiesced a little bit and gave Morpheus back the ability to move around. So we want to keep that pressure on. And Starlight still got him in the corner, and that's still good. But now he's got like 2 steps worth of defensive space that he can use, as opposed to 0, which might have taken the game from him. So that just looked like just a massive drive from a very tall dude. Maybe like either a little bit too close or a little bit too static while being kind of close. I think it's really easy to underestimate people's lunge distance. I feel like tall people can have a very confusing reach sometimes because some of them will lunge really far and some of them never will. So it can be really tough, especially with this much space. Like this feels small to me, but this feels like Morpheus could close this whole space in 2 lunges, and that's tough. Like I don't know what you do with that in single sword. That's hard. It's hard. Yeah, I think Starling needed to throw more shots, something to take up some of Morpheus's bandwidth. Maybe not even shots either, because it feels highly risky. Because I think Morpheus also has like a hand speed advantage too. But some more stutters, more jukes, maybe like some blade beats if Starling's like able to reach their sword. But yes, I do agree with you, Rock, that like they've got to do like something to establish some pressure. It's tough to do that on someone who has like a lot of reach on you. So for the tournament rules, first ring out is a hard reset with the second being a death, which lets people plan on trying to get some shots while backing up and then ring out before it was point blank. I don't know if that's what Morpheus was going for, but it's something I remember seeing. I didn't see Morpheus push Starling out of the ring on this one, but that's good to know that people were conscious of those rules. I think at My Kingdom, one of the current issues that we had with the tournament was like the effect of the boundary was not clearly defined, so people weren't able to strategize around it. So having that clarity at the MHOG Cup is a great plan. So Rock says, most certainly not saying it's easy. Fighting a taller fighter is difficult. Oh yeah. We're on the same page with that. I'm just trying to be clear for the group. That's a thing that I certainly know that you know. I think you made a smart comment about like throwing some shots to establish pressure. I think like stutters, jukes, blade beats can be done from like a little bit further away, which might be a little bit safer. But I think that we're on the same track there. That like you need some kind of offensive pressure. You need to figure it out. The other thing that I want to call out is I think. Does Starling have a C? That looks like a C4. Maybe not. I felt like this belt favor looks like the C4 pre-workout, which is like brings back a lot of memories. It is. Oh yes! Oh man, I've got them eyes, man. I've got them big lifting eyes. I can see it pre-workout. Like an eagle, how like an eagles can see a penny on the asphalt from like 2 miles in the air. I'm telling you, I can just sense it. That's awesome. So would B range be safe here to use with stutters? So I don't know what B range means because I don't use that term. So if you can define B range for me, I can comment on that. So I think Morpheus and others from earlier was less concerned about being backed in the corner because he always had the out. By the out, do you mean that you have that one step for a hard reset? Because that makes some sense. I think if they're not concerned about being in the corner because of the ability to use the hard reset to get out of trouble, that's fine. But that's a resource, and you should make them exhaust that resource. So in the range which you would use for snipes and not grinding. So for Starling, no. That's too close because Morpheus's B range is going to be way further than Starling's B range. So like Starling's B range where she could snipe Morpheus is going to be too close because he probably already has access to her torso and her body in general, like a kill shot. So I think that she would need to be just outside of his B range to do that. If that's what you meant, I agree with that. So good fights there. All right, this is Toby, and if someone could give me the name of the person on the right. Starts at 356. This is Toby versus Dragon. Yeah, that's the Toby. I hear that Toby's full name is Tobins, actually. But that's the Toby from Get Good Mondays, man. It's a special guest star. Yeah, so Toby versus Dragon. We have it 2 minutes. I'm going to watch this through the rest of the way, and there's going to be a 3-minute commercial break, and then I'll be back because they don't let you have emojis of your dog without running commercials. That's how Twitch gets you, man. The next thing I know, I'm out of control of my life, and I'm streaming all the time, even though I have, like, a great job. Okay. All right, so I have some comments. I'm going to wait till after the break. But all right, we back. Thanks for being patient. Whoops. I accidentally closed something. Okay, we got this back. All right, so we're back. We're still looking at Toby versus Dragon. So I think the first thing that I noticed, there's not like a ton of input that I can give here because I feel like there's not a lot present in this fight, right? I'll explain what I mean by that, right? So the range that these two guys are standing at, in my opinion, is way too close. Both of these guys are extremely static, And basically what I feel like they've agreed to do is play like a Wild West, like quick draw kind of thing, right? I think if I understood the outcome correctly, it went in Toby's favor. So you can make that decision if you feel like, I've got this guy's number, I need to conserve my energy, I know that I'm faster than them or taller than them, have longer reach, have better block strike, like all that stuff is fine. Like you can make that executive decision. I think knowing that Dragon is not from my area and knowing that Toby is, I think that I probably would not have done this in this way, right? So we're very close and very static, right? We've got some ring control going on, but we kind of get close and we're like, okay, it's happening right here, right? And Toby didn't really come out of the corner, so that may have factored into his decision, but I think that he should have maybe tried to take a little bit more ring for himself. This looks like not very much ring at all. I'm kind of noticing like how small this ring is specifically. This looks like it would be tough. I would want this to be like one more step back so that people can use more footwork, but I think it can be interesting to have like tournament rules that are different between tournaments. So having like small rings sometimes, big rings sometimes, like that's fine. But for something like Keep, like the theme with Keep is it's supposed to like crown the best fighter in Amtgard, right? And obviously like it doesn't really do that, but like if you have a tournament that's like kind of supposed to be that one that everyone's shooting for, I think you want to use a rule set that's like more open to I feel like I'm gonna say like less biased. Like having a small ring is very biased towards people with fast footwork because they can corner you really fast. It's very biased towards tall people because they take up more space in the ring and the shorter person has less defensive options to execute, right? So I think that this was like, looking at the size of this ring, this is like an interesting tournament concept that I would run one time, but for something like Keep that's supposed to be the championship, I think I would want a bigger ring. But anyway, back to the fight. So Toby's back in the corner, so he doesn't have a choice but to do the Wild West kind of stuff. But I feel like Dragon doesn't really do much in the way of like using the ring that he has gained control of to try to create some sort of advantage for himself, right? So like we've got all this lateral space that Dragon can control, and he kind of just elects to hang and bang with Toby, who's like very quick. I probably wouldn't do that with him myself. I would probably want to use some footwork to throw some kind of smoke on my intent. But I think what we got there was like, Toby's like, hey, I'm in the corner. I need to take a snipe to the body to try to kill this dude. I'm going to try to hand block with my offhand. And then I'm going to flurry to make sure that if my plan doesn't pan out, I at least get the reset. I think that's a very good call when you're in the corner, especially in single sword, because like the single sword meta is hit them in the body, get the reset. You don't have to kill them, or you don't have to not die, but you do have to kill them, right, in single sword. So I think that was what was going on here, right? Like, Toby's in the corner, Dragon's got him there, and he's not backing up. So Toby's like, all right, man, if you're going to hang here, I'm going to try to snipe you with a kill shot, and I'm at least going to get the reset, right? So you can see, like, he wasn't sure if he got the body or not on the offside, on that first shot across the body. So he hit his offhand twice to make sure he at least got that reset. So that's the smart use of the meta. So I feel like here, Toby should have tried to take a little bit more ring. He kind of walked in slow, and he's got a little bit more room, I think, this time, but not more than a step or two. I felt like one good quick step to the middle would have done Toby a lot of good here, because we talked about how the limited space behind you is a resource, and you need to try to protect your resources so that you have more options available to you. I think that was just a Dragon's like, I'm going to stab, and Toby just swatted it out of the way with his hand and blocked it. This is a situation where if I was dragging, stabs aren't something you do kind of like when you're stopped and static against people. They're something that you want to do when you know someone's going to come forward on you and you counter move towards them and stab them, right? But this looks like Toby advanced just a little bit, which kind of drew that stab. And then Dragon kind of didn't step forward enough to complete it. I want to see if Toby saw something that I didn't see. If he just reacted to that stab and hand blocked it, or if Dragon was kind of communicating that I'm going to stab you. So let's take a look at that. There wasn't really anything that I saw. His sword was like kind of stab position, but maybe also just like offside slot position. So I think that was just pure reaction speed for Toby. So kudos on that. That's really good. It's a fast dude. Tobin's has got that mental acuity, that speed. Okay, so same situation. Toby's kind of back. Not much space here. I think Dragon's probably got like, if this is a step and this is a step, he's got 2 defensive steps on reserve, and it looks like Toby's got like 1. So I think this is better than the last one, but I would still try to maybe get more ring positioning, more ring control to be able to express those defensive options. Okay, this was... Okay, so I think I got 2 critiques for Toby, but I think Dragon kind of just... I think what happened here with Dragon is he tried to stutter to like scout out, like, is there a fake or something that I can use here? But he did it from too close and he delayed for too long. And what Toby took from that is something to the tune of, this guy is going to fake on me. I need to hit him now, because if he faked once, he's probably going to fake again. So if I swing right away, I'll hit him while he's faking, and he will lose for that, right? So if Dragon wanted to try to set up like some kind of fake for himself, so first of all, his fake looked like an outward sweep of some kind to some kind of sweep to the outside lane, like maybe a flat wrap or something like that. But the last round, he used a stab, right? And I think Toby parried it with his hand, but Toby still has like stabs on the brain, right? So there's 2 adjustments I would make here. The first is Dragon's got this ring control. So he has the ability to move laterally. So if you want to start setting up a fake, you need to do that from the outside and not try to engage to see if they're like willing to let you fake, right? Like on some level, the meta is like your opponent has to be willing to block for you to fake them, right? And in single sword, you do not have to block in single sword. You should. Well, what you have to be able to do is swing and make sure the other guy is dead for trying, right? So if you're going to fake on someone in single sword, you probably need to do it from like a scenario where you're already winning and kind of shutting them down and you've got them on the defense. You got to scout that fake from a little bit further away to make sure that they're not just going to rush you down or counter strike you, which is harder in these tiny rings, right? Because you don't have much space to avoid like a rush down. And the third thing that I would do is I would think about the context of the previous fights. I think, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I felt like Dragon had mostly inside chops and that stab. And he tried to do an outside fake. I don't think he's really thrown to the outside yet. So you have to establish that my shot is a danger to you before that fake is ever going to work. So I think that's why that didn't pan out for him. Kind of came in, outside fake. He settled in. He wanted to go outside inside, but I think Toby called that, I'm going to fake too fast for him, and he got bonked for it. I think the only other thing that I see from Toby that I would consider making as like this is my next improvement target is it looked like all of Toby's swings we're kind of down and rising up like this, right? And the problem with that in single sword is the guy can just go, I don't really give a shit if you're going to do that. I'm going to hit you like in the body, or I guess the arrow's hitting Toby in the head right now. But he can chop your shoulders, he can chop your chest. They can go low and join you. But when you take these low swings, you remember how we talked about, like, especially in single sword, we want our strikes to also create some defense for us. So a shot that we're not sure is going to hit should always end in a position where it's kind of also a block. But low shots can kind of never do that. So I feel like we're too close, so those low shots are open too much of the time. And the high shots, we're not really executing those high shots to like keep ourselves safe. So I think Toby kind of won that because he's faster than the other guy and had really great reaction speed. Kudos to him. It might have saved him some energy. He might have been like, okay, I think I've beaten this guy ditching, so I'm just gonna like be patient and save my energy for later in the bracket. That is a valid strategy, but just like as an isolated fight, I think those are the changes that I would make there. So hopefully that makes some sense. All right, next fight. So this is Magnus versus Toby. I feel like this big red ring, I don't know if it's a camera angle, but I feel like the red ring is bigger than the green ring. Okay. I think Magnus just, I can't tell their voices apart, but I think Magnus just called that for Toby. Okay. I think Toby landed that stab. I know Magnus just had surgery on his hand, so he may have been being like kind of careful with what he was doing. So, and I just recovering from surgery myself, so we're just gonna look at this in terms of like what we see, knowing that Magnus is a very good fighter and is probably like still exploring the space in his hand healing, which is tough and takes some time. But we're going to try to kind of look at it just from a strategic, like, I think this is what we would adjust in this specific circumstance. So this probably isn't really reflective of like Magnus's capabilities. It's just reflective of like where he's at in the healing process. So I liked the distance that they kept better than the last fight. So that makes me wonder if Toby was like kind of just saving some energy. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, thanks for clarifying, Toby. I appreciate that. Okay. I can't tell whose voice is what. So I think I heard you and it was actually, I thought I heard Magnus saying that it was your round, but it was yours. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go back. So I think this is still a tiny bit close on round one. So you need to take more of a little bit of a distance away from people, which is tough because the ring is small. So maybe they're just like, hey, I'm not going to give you that distance. I'm going to push you back into the corner, which is fair. So Magnus kind of starts out with this off foot forward stance. So he's like, my off foot's forward and my hand is forward, right? Like a punch shield. So there's two things here. The options from here, his range is shortened when he takes this position, right? Because his shoulder is shifted back this way, when normally it would probably be more like here. So his range is a little bit shorter, but he knows that, right? So usually the purpose of this stance, I think I like blue for steps better, is this foot right here is probably going to swing around the whole way as like one big close and a bonus geometry change to the situation where like his shoulder, he's got this arm and this shoulder first, and then when he switches, it changes a lot of the context of like where those targets on your body are. So you would be surprised for just switching which foot is forward, how much will miss you for free. It's very surprising. And also he's got his hand block ready up here. And this is actually a great position because it's angled towards where your sword would come in. So it's covering up not just like a point like a hand would, but it's covering off a whole plane. So when you, and I think this is a smart stance to take in this situation, right? Because if he's got this step forward, if Toby's being defensive, he has to move about this far, but the edge of the ring is like right here, right? So there's not really any room to back up. So I think this might have been another position where you would have wanted to take more ring control. Just to, especially because he's coming up with this stance, right? So there's like, I don't want to say there's a solution to this stance, but there's kind of a thing that you have to do when it arises. So we got Coleman in the chat. So Magnus really loves that goofy-footed stance. He really wants people to extend for offside and double tap. He puts a bunch of fighters through the blender with that one. Oh yeah, like that's kind of the point. It's like he's trying to either draw in shots here or use your shots here to kind of interrupt what you're doing, and also take that sweeping step forward so you get much closer to you than you think that you would be. So you have to kind of, when someone does this, what they're kind of doing is leveraging towards the meta of single sword, which is, I don't care if I die, but you're definitely going to be dead, and we'll see whoever is not dead first, right? It's not really about surviving. It's about making sure that the other guy's dead. So I think if you know that stuff about this specific stance where this arm is forward, the thing to do is in Coleman's comment where you want to fake at this, because a lot of the time that's going to trigger them to try to counter strike at you or drive in. So if you fake at that offhand, a lot of the time you'll get them to expose their real stance, and they usually kind of won't do it again. The other thing that you can do is this shoulder is super far back, right? So if you move laterally out around this way, especially in small doses, you'll get closer to this arm right here. So you might be able to get a free snipe out of that. And if you position yourself out around this way, he has to kind of turn this way with you. So if he tries to take that sweeping step close, he has to not just take it, if he's going straight, he would take it this far with the current red arrow. But if you go out around, he has to step more like this far to face you, which kind of cuts down on that game plan in that range, right? So I think if you took a little bit more ring control there, you would have been able to interface with this stance. And I think that an important thing to note about like any stance that has like a switch to it is most people's plans are really only one stage deep. Sometimes people have like a flow chart or something that they can kind of go through at a deeper level. But I think usually people plan to do like one thing or one like level of the branch tree of possibilities. And then level 2, they usually are just like, okay, I'm going to ride on reaction and instinct here, right? So if you accomplish this maneuver and try to pop him out of that stance, a lot of the time it's like, shit, I don't have a plan anymore. I'm not in the stance that I plan to use anymore. Now I got to just bang. And I think that has a high chance of going in Toby's favor, because Toby kind of illustrated his ability to kind of box from the inside, even in just like single sword, right? So when you see a stance like this, you have to think of it as like, it's a lot like a mini game in fighting, where if you lose, you die, right? But if you can get past the initial gimmick, now it's like a Dark Souls boss, right? That has like an initial gimmick, and then you get past the initial gimmick first, because that will kill you if you don't, and then you get to actually fight like after that. So those are some of the ways that I would try to engage with that. So you kind of just like, Toby kind of just dove in for that body. I'm not sure how it worked out for him. One thing I want to call out, Toby, I've seen this a couple of times. We saw this in your previous round too, where a lot of the time where you're stepping forward, you're landing with too much back extension. So this back foot is not serving you because it's coming up off the ground, right? So you need to kind of practice stepping forward and landing such that like both feet are on the ground, because you've got like a good initial press that's pretty quick and pretty sudden, but you're ending in a position where you cannot press further. So if he can get you to kind of jump the gun into this position, now he kind of gets to do whatever he wants to do. And he's kind of in the same position too, but he's got longer reach than you, and his foot is not quite as high, so it's probably easier for him to get, it's probably easier for him to reset to neutral by like a few frames or something like that. So I might try working on, when you step forward, what you want is this leg, instead of being straight like this, you want this to land more like this, and your torso, instead of being bent forward like this, you want to be a little bit more organized, like straighter up like that, so that your center of gravity is like behind that knee. Like a Dark Souls boss, so run at him while he's mid-swing, gotcha. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not Dark Souls. That's making me hot. Like I'm flashing back to Elden Ring now and just getting dunked and dunked and dunked while I learned that it was a very painful game. So I think if we continue watching this, Toby, you'll kind of go into that drifting back foot on round 2. I think. Use the iframes on the spin. Oh yeah. Spins have iframes. Everybody knows that. Very polite. So, actually, that was better. It just looked like your momentum carried you. Forward. Yeah, like I felt like you got into a good initial leg position there, but you kind of kept coming forward. I don't know if you like over lunged or didn't land low or deep enough, but I think you got to be a little bit more careful of that. It's also like the fight was over here, so it's kind of a miniature optimization, but it's just another example of that kind of happening. Let's see here. So same stance. I think that was like a good, strategically, I think that stabbing there was a really good plan, because we talked about that. We talked about that forward step from that position. Like you're going to assume that he's going to make that switch, and you're going to stab him while he's making that switch. So I think that like tactically, thrusting was the right choice on that one, like counter thrusting as he came in, especially with having less room in the ring. I think it looks like you just got unlucky and hit him in the neck, like you said. So I think that's probably what I would have done in that situation too. Okay, we got Big Head. Big Head and Magnus. Let's see, let's get the fight start. Okay, fight starts 5:33. Magnus versus Big Head. Hey, Max, how you doing, buddy? This is finals. Big Head had advantage in the double limb bracket. Thank you. There's like documentation on YouTube of the Keep Sword and Board Finals 2015, where I did not understand double LM and won the first round and super embarrassed myself walking off because I didn't realize I had to win the second one because I was coming from loser's bracket. But anyway, so this is Magnus and Big Head for the finals. That's an interesting guard. I don't know if you guys caught that, but Big Head is starting. Look how he's starting this fight out. He's starting like this. It's like, swing at my forearm. Do it, Magnus. So I like that. It's interesting that he didn't stick with that. I love how Magnus recognized, like, that's an obvious bait, so he started at the bait to see what he would do. I think that was the right thing to do there. Let me see this again. Oops, so it's 533. Some discussion. So you had that bait. Okay, I think I see what happened there. So that was really fucking smart, right? So like, what I think happened here is Big Head started off with like a cross position bait where he showed him his forearm, right? So that's layer 1. Magnus recognizes that this is a bait and goes to stutter at the bait to try to see, to try to either pop Big Head out of the bait and say like, okay, dude, I know this is a bait, like fuck off, get serious, right? Or to see if he'll like attack him or something like that. There's a very safe stutter from a very safe range. And I think Big Head saw that and saw that his options were either abandon the bait and don't try to use it, or keep the bait and see if I can trick him. And what I love about this was Big Head used a counter strike from his bait position as soon as Magnus came in. So let's watch that again. This is really smart. I need to think about this. This is really good layering. Where we got Big Head's bait, right? Magnus is like, I'm going to stutter at the bait. Stutter. Big Head used the resource of the ring control to back up a little bit to get safe, but kept the bait, right? And then he came in again. And I think Magnus's original plan may have been to like stutter and fake him again. And Big Head's like, nah, I'm just going to swing. So it looked like I think he swung low and then crossed. So I was like, yep. So I love that. That's such like a cool hand over hand, like layering part there. That's really smart. I gotta think about that a little bit more, because like using a passive bait on opponents at like a high level kind of doesn't really work anymore. But I think Big Head uses that passive bait here not as like a literal bait, but more of like a way of trying to make Magnus select a specific strategy, and then he abandons the bait to counter that strategy, right? So the counter strategy for a bait is stutter at the bait and hit somewhere else, but the counter strategy for stuttering or faking is an immediate counter strike. So it's super smart. Getting hit in the armpit through the whole plan off though. Did Big Head get hit in the armpit? Let me see that again. That's fine. Still, it's hard to figure out all of the shots that land watching it one time, but I still really like that plan. I think it sounds like it looks like Charlie kind of abandoned the stutter and kind of just landed that cross in that armpit then. That's fine. Still, I think that was like really solid thinking and analysis. That is just like a super clean snipe. I think. I think what happened there, it looks like Magnus advanced and Big Head just retreated a tiny bit. And then it looks like Big Head retreated a little bit and then kind of just leaned back to simulate a retreat and then lunged in on step 3. I'm going to see if I'm right about that. That's a really smart thing to do for such a small space, too. On discussion 55. So I think it's going to be backward step. I don't think he stepped back much. kind of like lowered himself, leaned back, and then just kind of forward. I think Magnus got closer than he thought that he would be because Big Head wasn't really backing up. But I love that little backward lean to kind of make it feel like he backed up. And then as Magnus kind of moved forward again, Big Head just clipped him for it. So that was good stuff. Magnus had a really positive interaction going high, so I wanted him to think high at the beginning of the next fight because my next plan was to go under his arm since he had to come so far forward with his goofy-footed stance. Gotcha. Oh, that was really smart. It worked out for you really well. Wanted him to think high. Okay. Let me see. How do you feel like you got him to think high? I want to see if I can guess. I think maybe a low posture and a forward lean makes me think high. So it's like high. I'm getting lower. Yeah, so getting lower might communicate like I want you to go high. Lower, back up, and then pop. Yep. Smart counter. I think that was just like pure reaction. It was pretty sick. That was just like, sorry, Magnus, I'm quicker. I'm going to see this one more time. I think it's the first bait that we saw from round 1, which I think is smart because like Magnus already had a basic plan off that bait. And it looked like you kind of caught the hand block and countered him. So like swinging it. It looked like you reacted and hand blocked the thrust and stabbed it for it. That's sick, man. That was good. Okay.